A peace, family. It's Christina. And today I really wanted to talk to you guys about where I've been at and what I've been doing, why I started this epic yoga journey, and all of that. And this is really mostly intended for my oldest friends. So the people that I've known forever, especially from like high school, college, even like people I knew in my early 20s who I'm still friends with, a lot of people have been like, yo, what happened? Like, why did you pursue this path of yoga? Like, what is yoga? Why did you do yoga? Why did you disappear for all of these years? And like, where have you been at? And like, why are you coming back now? And like, what did you learn? And so I have an old yoga page. I mean, not an old yoga page, an old page. Like my original page on Instagram, I started in 2014. So a lot of you guys are new friends. I just met a couple of years ago, but my original page was really old. And so I kind of, when I went down this long, epic path of yoga, I really fundamentally, it was like I shifted everything up. I like completely shifted my life upside, and my life was already shifted upside down, but I really flipped tables. I think that's the best way to really explain it. And so just to give you guys some backstory, I'm not going to get too deep into it because I'm over it for the most part. But you know, when y'all are like, why did you disappear? The shortest answer to that is that I had acute PTSD. And I don't mean like complex PTSD. I don't mean it in like a, oh, I was like depressed. No, I mean like I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder from a therapist, and it was literally just because of my life. Like my life, and I'm not saying my life is any worse or any better than anybody else's, but for me, my life was feeling so traumatic and disturbing for me. I was 30 years old. Some of you remember some of the events that happened. I'm literally not going to talk about it because it's not even worth it at this point. But all that matters is that at the age of 30, you know, I felt like I was living out a whole bunch of really traumatic and crisis type of situations, like over and over again. And it felt like these situations were almost repetitive, where it was like, why is this same thing happening to me over and over and over again with different people? And it was like, it got to a point where I was so like disturbed by this. I was physically injured. I was like mentally, like it was more mentally and emotionally confused, and like really didn't understand why my life was not what I wanted it to be at all. And what's fascinating is on the outside, like for anyone who looked at my life on the outside, right? If you're like, you're not saying superficial, but a lot of people are kind of superficial, and you judge people and their lives based on just the outside, right? So like on the outside, I had everything I needed. I already had like a nice place. I had a car, I had a job, I had a lot of friends, I had, you know, boyfriend, like, you know, I thought we were gonna get married. And it's like, on the inside, it was just trash. Like it was just total chaos, catastrophe on the inside. I kept having negative experiences, traumatic experiences. I was really in it, you know, things came to a head when I was 30 to the degree that I had PTSD. So I'm not gonna get into it. It doesn't matter. Everyone has different experiences, but I really was so disturbed by some of the things that happened to me that I was literally like unable to really work. Like I was emotionally just so like, how did this happen? Like, how is this real? Like, how is my life real right now? Like, this can't even be happening. And it was so like there, like my life was like, this can't be happening. There's no way this is happening. This can't be my life. And then I was like, no, this is my life. Like, what the fuck? And so I was just swirling and swirling. And my mind was so confused, and to the degree that I couldn't even really work. Like it was like that way. And so I pursued the path of yoga. When you're like, why did you do this? It was because I was like, PTSD, like I wasn't functioning normally anymore in the way that most people are functioning, like and able to just carry on a job, carry on basic conversations. Like I remember I was on a phone call, like a conference call at my job, and was so like PTSD at the time, like anxiety, that someone was like, Christina, like asked me a basic question, Christina, and I was just like stuck. I was frozen, like I couldn't speak, and I was on the phone, but I was so trauma, like I wasn't really there. And so I realized, like, in a really interesting way, that, like, it's almost like all of a sudden things became really clear for me. And I was just looking at my life. I was like, why am I here? Why is everything not the way I want it to be? And it was almost like I was able to finally see the cards that I was dealt, right? So if you're like playing a game of poker or like rummy or whatever, spades, and you're like, these are my hand. This is trash. Like, this is, I can't do anything with this. Like, you're playing spades, or like, you're like, I have nothing. Like, I have literally nothing. I have no fucking spades. Like, I have nothing. Like, and I think that was kind of the feeling, was like, if you are in a place of your life where you realize you're playing a game of spades and you have not a single spade, you have nothing. Like, you're like, I feel like on the outside it might seem like things could have been okay, but like deep down, the things that I think make for a successful and happy life were completely missing, right? In terms of having, I think, the support that I needed, and having certain things I think make for successful living. I think that it became clear for me at 30 that they were deeply missing in my life, and that without making some type of profound, serious changes, that I would continue to live out these weird, chaotic situations over and over and over and over and over again, because that had been clearly the pattern that I had been experiencing all that time. And it was like, I don't want to live like this anymore. Like, I don't want this to be my life anymore. And so I needed to make some fundamental big changes. So that was the why, right? And then there's the what. Like, what did I do? What I did was I literally, and I mean this in the most literal way, like, asked God for a new life, you know? And so I remember, like, I started out doing Buddhist meditation, really couldn't meditate, didn't get it, didn't understand it, couldn't really do it, but I was trying, you know. Then I found Ashtanga yoga and started doing that, and that was very beneficial for me physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, all of that. And I'm going to get into all of that at some point, but I'm just kind of giving you a high level because people keep asking me. And, you know, after, I would say, about a solid year, maybe year and a half of meditation, shit meditation, like, I really didn't know how to meditate at that time. I was struggling with that, but meditation and asana practice. I hadn't learned any breath work really at that time. I remember I was like, I want a new life. Like, I want a new life. Like, I want to start over. Like, I want to start a do-over, right? I need a do-over. Like, I need an opportunity to do this again on my terms. Like, I see the hand I was dealt. I need some new cards, God. Like, I can't do anything with these cards that I have. And so I was literally suicidal. Like, this was years ago, like, suicidal. But I realized it wasn't that I wanted to die. It was that I just didn't want the life I had anymore. And I haven't really told anybody this publicly. I've said it to close friends, like, but I'm saying it now because I really want you to get what happened and why I've made the choices I made, because I think it's going to give you guys, those who've really known me, a lot of context. So about a year and a half into this yoga practice, I was experiencing just like huge changes. I called it magic hour. Like, I would finish yoga practice and would just journal for like an hour and just be like, oh my God. It was like realizations were just coming to me every day about myself, about my family, about why things were the way that they were for me. And things just started to become clearer and clearer, and like the things I did not want became more and more apparent. And so I hit this crisis point where I was like, I don't want that life anymore. I want a new car. I want a new hand. And I realized that yoga is a tool to get, if you are someone who like was given good cards, right? You don't feel the need for new cards, right? You're like, oh, my life is cool. Like, I already have, you know, I was born into a good family, or I was born into peace and on some level, or joy on some level, right? I don't feel that I was born into peace and joy. I was born into like chaos and sadness and confusion, right? And so I think that for those people who maybe were dealt what they would consider to be a good hand that they're happy with, I think I get why y'all don't get people like me who are like, yeah, I'm gonna throw up the deuces and start over, because it for me was such that I didn't even want my life anymore. I didn't want my friends anymore. I didn't want to live in Atlanta anymore. I was like, how do I redo this? Like, I need to start over. And so I kind of wanted to kill myself, but I didn't really, and I didn't know what to do. And so I literally went to emergency. I was at Crawford Long Hospital before it was renamed Emory. And I was like, I went to emergency and I was like, I think I want to kill myself. Like, and like, I talked to this guy because I genuinely did not know what to do. And I talked to this guy and he was like, you know, gave me the rundown. He was like, look, you know, if you tell me certain things, then I will have to commit you, and like you're not gonna have the autonomy that you're used to having, and you're not gonna be released until like someone else determines that. So he's like, you might want to think about how you feel and what you really want to do. And so he steps out of the room and I was like, bet, like just enough time for me to run out, right? So I leave and I run out and I'm sitting on, like, it's like 2-3 in the morning, sitting outside on Peachtree Street. And I was like, what the fuck, God? Like, what is this? Like, all of these things happened. I thought that I was doing right, but like, you know, I've been trying to follow you. Like, I've been preaching, like all of this. And I'm like, why is all of this falling apart? Like, why is my life just totally falling apart? Like, I feel like I don't deserve this. Like, I don't want this hand anymore. Like, give me something new. Give me a new life. And God was like, bet, that's what you want? And I was like, yeah. And God was like, all right, you got it. Just like that. And that was the word I received from God, like at that moment. It was like 2 or 3 in the morning. I don't even remember the date. It was sometime in June, probably like it was the year I did my first teacher training. So I guess that was 2018. And I really felt like at that time I was reborn. What people would consider to be like reborn, like I'm a reborn Christian or whatever. I think that really genuinely happened to me a few years ago. And so I'm not saying that that means I'm enlightened at all. I'm not saying that that means that I'm like, you know, super Christian or anything at all. I think it means that I asked God for a new life and God was like, bet. And so, okay, when you guys, those of you who like genuinely know me, saw me sell my place and go to San Francisco for my first teacher training, that was immediately after that experience when I really genuinely felt like I need to sell my belongings and pursue God and pursue this path of yoga and pursue this spiritual understanding and ask God for that, or not ask God, I've already been given a new life. And so I was like, in my mind, living into that new life. And I feel like I've been continuing to live a new life ever since June of 2018. I just never really articulated that because I know that I don't think at the time I even had the clarity of understanding of what was even happening to me. And I don't think that I was able to articulate it at all until really just now, like till right now, that I felt like I was like still in some level of chaos. Like I was like, I'm trying, Lord, but like, I know what's going on. And you know, I think the reason I'm really making this now is because so many people keep asking me, of my older friends, like, where did you go? Why did you disappear? Like, why haven't I heard from you in so long? And all of that. And I think that I really didn't have the clarity of mind, and I didn't even have the confidence in myself, or even in like that I had made the right decision for a long time. I was like, I think I made the right decision, I'm not sure. Like, like I was still kind of in the muck, in the mix, in the transformation, you know, in the middle of all of that. And now I'm like, oh, this is what I've done. Now I can explain it to you. And so that's kind of what it is. And so I think for a lot of people that I've known for a long time, this isn't about my new friends, like I know a lot of new people, but for those people I've known for a long time, it's, what happened is, you know, I don't have any hatred. There was a time when I had a lot of anger, I felt like I was betrayed by a lot of people. I felt like I was let down by a lot of people. I felt like the way I used to describe it was, I felt like a lamb amongst wolves. Like I felt like I was left out here with very little protection, and people just saw like this kind of young, vulnerable girl and was like, bet, like she's a mark, like I can take advantage of her, and such they did, right? And so those of you who know the story know it. We're not even gonna get into it, but that was the feeling. And so there were a lot of feelings of, I don't know who to trust. Like, I've known all these people and no one has protected me, no one has warned me. And then when things go south, it's kind of like, oh, that wasn't my fault. I didn't have anything to do with that. Oh, that sucks for you. And I ended up having so many people that I've known just go around, talk shit about me, like say, oh, well, she's crazy, oh, well, you know, Christina, all of this, like I'm seeing this on the outskirts, but no one's actually checking on me, no one's calling, no one's seeing how I'm actually doing. It's just this kind of like chitter chatter. And, you know, those people that were talking to me, and I'm not mad about it, because I appreciate so many people like trying to stay in touch and make sure I was okay, because there were people who were doing that, but it was like, even those people, it felt like were trying to hold me in to people, places, and things that I did not want to be attached to anymore, right? And so as I'm trying to like pursue this path of yoga, I literally sell my place, like I'm moving across the country, I did my first teacher training, and then I have my friends whom I love, like I'm not mad about this, but my friends whom I love, like, Christina, don't you remember this, and don't you remember this person, and then bringing people around me trying to reconnect me with things that I was trying to let go of. And so that was the point when I really started to separate from everyone, and I know a lot of people didn't get it and still don't, and I've heard a lot of negative people say really negative things to me about that. And I understand it, because if you don't get why I did that and where I went, like I can see where it's like, oh, Christina just disappeared and just kind of fell off the face of the earth. I get it. But like, that's why I'm kind of now like, let me explain to you why I did that and what was really going on, because it felt like I wasn't really able to make the changes that I wanted to make and evolve in the direction I wanted to evolve in, while people were trying to keep me the same and keep me connected to old people and old things and old, like, oh, you remember when we were so fucked up, and you remember when you were passed out, and you remember that guy, and you remember the, and it's like, yeah, but I don't really want to, right? And so the thing that's like interesting is like, and I'm gonna talk so much more about this, but this is just kind of my overview video, is like, for me, the path of yoga was an opportunity for me, like I said, to change my cards and to disidentify with what I call the ego. So like, the ego for me is like your name, the way you look like, your family, the place you grew up at, right? So a lot of you who've known me for a long time will see me, and like, if you see me on the street, you'd be like, oh, that's Christina, I recognize her because she looks like a certain way, or she sounds, I know her voice, she sounds like a certain way, right? Or, you know, she's the girl that used to do this. I remember, because we were doing that together. But like, what I feel like yoga has done is like, you see the shell and it looks similar to like the way it used to look, but like, I feel like I gutted this whole inside and then there's new stuff in there, right? It feels like I'm look like the same person, but on the inside, I'm genuinely not, in a lot of different ways. You know, I'm still in the same body, I still sound similar, I still look similar, but it's like the journey I've been on has transformed my mind, transformed my consciousness in such a way that like, I'm really not exactly the same person that you remember. And so I think that's kind of why I'm kind of making this video before I really start to come back out of the shadows and like talk to everybody again, because a lot of times when I see my old friends, there's this insistence like, oh, well, you're back now and we're gonna go back to the way it was. And I'm like, actually, like that's really the opposite of what I really want, right? Like, I might still want to reconnect with people, I might still love people I've known for some time, but I think there's like I guess me wanting you guys to understand the degree to which I've changed, intentionally so, and that's just what it is, you know? And I'm gonna talk so much more about like, because I keep getting questions, and so I'm gonna start making these videos really just to answer the questions I'm getting from people, because I know there's so much curiosity about what yoga is, what yoga does, why I was doing Ashtanga in particular, what the benefits are of different practices I've tried, pros, cons, all of that. I'm gonna talk about all of that. But first, I wanted to talk about myself and like how I got on this journey and why I've done some of the things I've done for those people who've known me for the longest, because I feel like I kind of like went off, you know, into the wilderness and like was just really doing my own thing, and it was beautiful. I mean, it's been beautiful. It's a beautiful journey. I'm really glad that I did it. But at the same time, I feel like now it's time for me to like come out of the cocoon, come out of hiding. And after I've done all of these changes and evolving and growing and all of that, and that way I can convey to everybody like what it is that I really did. And so that's kind of what I wanted to say to you guys, is that I really didn't go anywhere. Like, I've been traveling, I really didn't go anywhere. I just had to go down the beautiful path of yoga to find myself, to find healing, to find freedom, liberation, to break what I would call generational curses that I felt I could not break free from without making drastic changes. And I feel that, you know, I'm not saying that I'm, you know, anything, but I do feel that I've accomplished a lot of those goals, and I feel mentally free in a way that is just really hard to explain. You know, I feel like liberated from a lot of fear, liberated from trauma, liberated from things of the past, you know, in such a way that is profound, that when they talk about like peace that surpasses all understanding, it is literally that, you know, the peace that is literally inside of me, within me, right? That no one can give me, that like is totally outside of like everybody, right? Like I can literally sit within myself, by myself, and be totally joyful and happy, and now I'm in a place where I'm starting to make music. I've been singing, I've been sewing, I've been creative, right? And so it's like all of that heaviness that I had, for a lot of you guys that really remember how heavy I was, like the stormy cloud, right? Once that was lifted and like freed, it's like there's so much, and so there's so much joy, like there's so much creativity that's there once you can break free of all of that mental chaos, right? And so the longer I do this, part of the reason why I'm coming back out and starting to make videos about what yoga is and stuff is because the more I do this and realize like I had acute PTSD, right? That a lot of people have stuff like that, right? Maybe haven't had such a dramatic circumstances that they have a diagnosis or have even gone to therapy or anything, but like the more that I start to be open about these things, and the more that I teach, and the more that I have friends who also pursue yoga, and we have these beautiful conversations, I realize that like so many people have been traumatized. So many people have experienced things that they're like, I wish I could change my cards, or like, how do I change that? How do I get rid of this? Or yo man, like let me tell you what happened to me when I was a kid. And I'm like, bet, like I hear that, like I get it in a deep way, like I promise you, you know? And so I think this is not only to kind of explain where I've been at, but also to kind of let y'all know, like if y'all are also in a place where you're like, I feel lost, like I feel like what the fuck is going on, like that's so normal, and there's so much on the other side of that, right? That you don't have to run away from those feelings. You can actually dive into those feelings and really find light and joy and peace. And I think the last part I want to say, just for now, I'm going to make more, but you know, a lot of times when I talk about the ego, like the personality that we're given, or not we're given, because on some level we do have a personality, but on some level, you know, if you take, you know, like for my friends from Pasadena, right? A lot of people from Pasadena will have similar experiences. And when I moved to Atlanta, you realize that there are different experiences that are common to Atlanta. Likewise, you know, people who maybe look a certain way might have a certain experience in the world. People who might look a different way might have certain experience in the world, right? And so I think that, you know, it's kind of hard to explain what I'm trying to say, but it's like realizing that I am so much more than all of these external things. I'm so much more than the girl from Pasadena. I'm so much more than the girl who dyed my hair blonde for so many years. I'm so much more than a girl who was preaching, right? If you met me at different places of my life, you might say, Christina is that, right? So if you met me when I was a churchy girl and I was preaching, you might identify me as the girl who preaches, who used to have blonde hair, right? And if you met me today, you'd be like, oh, that's the girl who wears a headscarf, right? Same person, just different shell, different time. And I think that, you know, I'm really going to talk more about this, but like a lot of us, self included, like I know that before I pursued the path of yoga, I was so believed that I am all of these things, right? And that if I change my hair, then who am I? If I don't do yoga now, then who am I, right? And I think that for me, the path of yoga, the freeing part of yoga is realizing that you don't have to identify with any of that. And part of the reason why separating from everyone can be so beneficial is because, you know, while you're surrounded by people who've known you for your whole life, and they remember when you used to like stink and like, you know what I'm saying, do stupid stuff when you're a kid, like, oh, little Tina, I remember when you used to blah, 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 right? Like, those people will, and it's collective, right? We collectively keep each other attached to our ego because it's like, I remember you this way, and so I'm gonna keep reminding you of who you are and who I think you are, who I want you to be, who I want you to date, where I want you to work, right? So if I'm just with my friends and people I've known for some time, right? And I'm saying, you know, I want to do something, I want to get a new job, and they're like, well, I think you should do this, or I know someone who does that, right? And so all of these different people are swaying the direction of where they think I should go and who I should be and what I should do, right? And as long, and most of us are stuck in the ego self, in the identity that we were born with, and think that that is truly our personality, when maybe some of it is. But I think the deeper you go, you realize that any of that can be changed, right? So if you're like, well, I'm just a person who, you know, I just, you know, someone said to me the other day, like, someone said something to me and I really didn't like that, and the person was like, well, you know, you just don't know how I talk to people. And so, you know, I've even said things like that. Well, I just talk that way. Why? You can't be mad. That's just how I talk, right? But like, the beauty of the path of yoga is once you begin to see clearly, then you can choose, do I want to stay that way or do I want to change? No one's saying you have to change or that you even want to change, but I think the beauty of it is realizing that you can, right? That pretty much everything to me of your personality has been learned at some point, you know? You learned to talk that way to people at some point because of some reason, right? Maybe you were around people who didn't seem to listen well, you know, so you learned to be more aggressive with the way you talk. Or maybe you were around people who are different, you know what I'm saying? And you learned to speak differently. Maybe you learned to be kind of passive because of your home environment or because of the people you grew up around, right? And so we grow up and think that, well, because I've been acting this way for all these years, that is who I am, and that is unable to be changed. And so then we start being defeated, and it's like, oh, well, like, I'm just born this way, right? Like, I'm just born an asshole, or I'm just born a victim, or I'm just born this traumatized person. And I think that the reality is a lot of that is conditioning. It's learned, it's adopted, it's stuff that we have learned to do to protect ourselves, to feel safe. And once you start to really see clearly and give yourself the chance to just kind of like ask yourself, like, is this who I want to be? I think there's so much freedom there. There's so much freedom there, and you can really decide. Like, I think, you know, I think I want to change, or I think I want to keep this the same and change that, right? You don't have to change everything, but I just think that, you know, that openness to change, that openness to other possibilities, that openness to saying, you know, I know that I've been this all this time. Is it okay for me to ask questions? Is it okay to change? And I think the answer is absolutely yes. Like, absolutely. You know, you don't need permission to do that. You don't need permission from me or anyone. But I know that I had a lot of guilt and weird feelings about, like, is it okay that I've taken this time to separate myself so that I can figure out who I am outside of everybody, outside of my mother, outside of my parents, outside of everyone in my family, outside of all of that. Like, who am I? And who do I want to be? And I'm just really grateful that I've had really like 6-7 years to really explore that. And And I'm going to talk more about what yoga is and all the different components, all the 8 limbs of yoga, all the things I've been doing. I'm going to talk about pranayama, breathwork, meditation, all that, diet. I'm going to talk about my vegan diet when I stopped being vegan, and all of that, and just being authentic to myself. You know, I'm not trying to proselytize anybody. I'm not trying to preach at anybody. But for those of you who are interested in what I did, that's who this is for. And if it's helpful, I think that's great. I really want to start having interfaith conversations and, you know, not really pushing anything in particular, but just opening up some of these conversations and talking about some of these books I've been reading and things I've been exploring, just to start the conversation and just to get people to kind of think about some things in some different ways, and some yoga of the mind is what I would call it, some yoga of the consciousness. So I hope that was helpful in kind of explaining where I've been at, what I've been doing, and like I just want to say to everybody, like all my old friends, like I really do love you guys a lot, and I've been following a lot of you guys from a distance as I've been doing me, and I'm just so grateful for so many of you who, even as I was like way over here, that y'all didn't let go of me, that you didn't stop calling me, you didn't stop hitting me up. Even when I changed my number, y'all didn't stop hitting me up. Y'all couldn't text me, so I was getting emails, DMs, like, where are you at, girl? Like, what's going on? And I'm so grateful for like so many of you, for so much love and positive energy, because I really was at one point in a very dark place, but I just can't tell you how beautiful that dark place is if you allow yourself to go there. Not everyone needs to go there, but for me, diving deeply into that kind of black hole, you know, and coming out through the light, I mean, it's just. And so I'm gonna stop here. I love you guys so much. I'm gonna start making so many more of these videos, and I just wanted to talk to you guys about all of that, where I've been at, what this yoga is. Make sure to follow me, like, subscribe on this channel, which is my Christina channel, just my personal channel. Liveology lives on, but I'm gonna start posting some things just as myself, because I think it's time for that. I think it's time for me to really kind of like come on out, and so here I am. So I love you guys so much as always, and I will see you on the next one. Peace and pineapples.